Hello guys and girls, and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of genre. You all were introduced to this yesterday with the vocabulary video, but today we're going to dive in a little bit deeper and talk about the different genres that you're going to need to know. There are two parts to this assignment today. The first part is the Edpuzzle video, but the other part of this assignment are some notes that you are responsible for filling in as you watch the video. You have your own copy of these notes on Google Classroom, and remember they will pop up over on the right hand side of the screen. If you go to today's assignment, right above the turn in button, you'll find your copy. If you do not have your notes open, you need to pause this video right now and go to Google Classroom and open your notes. Once you get to your note-taking sheet, you're going to see that on the left-hand side we have all of the different genres. In the middle, we're going to fill in some definitions, and then over on the right-hand side, those boxes are for examples. Each genre has something that you need to fill in. You're either going to be filling in the example or the definition as we go through the video for today. So again, make sure you fill in your notes as you watch. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, we are talking about the different genres that you're going to need to know. There are 12 of them. And as we go over these today, make sure you're switching back and forth between the video and your notes and filling in any of the blank boxes. The first genre that we're going to talk about is historical fiction. Historical fiction is a fictional story that takes place in the past, and it could include an event in history. So with historical fiction, fiction means the story is made up, so it did not really happen. But with historical fiction, we're usually focused on a true historical event in a real place, but the characters are make-believe. So the characters, the people in the story are not real, even though the historical event is. So let's look at an example of that. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a book that I know some of you all have read this year, and it is historical fiction. As it says at the bottom, during World War II, 8-year-old Bruno and his family leave Berlin to take up residence near the concentration camp where his father has just become commandant. Unhappy and lonely, he wanders out behind his house one day and finds Shmuel, a Jewish boy of his age. Though the barbed wire fence of the camp separates them, the boys begin a forbidden friendship, oblivious to the real nature of their surroundings. So we've got a real historical event, World War II. We have a real place, Berlin, but the characters in this story are make-believe, which makes this historical fiction. Right now, you need to go over to your notes and fill in anything that is missing for this genre. The next genre that we're going to talk about is fairy tale. Fairy tales are fictional stories, so they're made up, and they include princesses and royalty. Royalty means like kings, queens, princesses. They might have talking animals, magic. They sometimes begin with long ago or once upon a time, and they have a happy ending. Our example is a story you might be familiar with, which is Cinderella. And it says, with a wicked stepmother and two jealous stepsisters who keep her enslaved and in rags, Cinderella stands no chance of attending the royal ball. When her fairy godmother, there's our magic, appears and magically transforms her reality into a dream come true, Cinderella enchants the handsome Prince Charming, so there's our royalty, at the ball. But she must face the wrath of her enraged stepmother and sisters when the spell wears off at midnight. So we have the magic, we have the royalty, and if you've read Cinderella or if you've seen the movie, you do know that it has a happy ending, so it is a fairy tale. Right now, you need to go fill in your fairy tale notes. Our next genre is realistic fiction. Realistic fiction is a story that can happen in real life, but the characters can be make-believe. So in realistic fiction, we don't have anything that couldn't actually happen. So we don't have magic, we don't have talking animals, everything could happen, but the characters in the story are made up. The story is mostly from the author's imagination. Our example is a book that I know is really popular, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It says middle school is not an enjoyable experience for preteen Greg Heffley, but a horrid ordeal of social landmines that he must bear. To do so, he devises schemes to win him the recognition and status he feels he deserves, all of which fail miserably. Greg chronicles his misadventures, thoughts, and opinions in a diary to prepare for the day that he will no longer have to put up with nonsense. So Greg is a completely made-up character, but everything that happens in the story could happen in real life. So this is realistic fiction. Right now, you need to go fill in your realistic fiction notes. Our next genre is one of my personal favorites. It is fantasy. Fantasy is a fictional story that has some elements that cannot happen in real life, and it might have magic, dragons, castles, or supernatural events. Now, what I've noticed is sometimes people confuse fantasy and fairy tale, but remember with fairy tale, we're probably going to have some type of royalty, like a princess, Prince Charming, and they're going to have that once upon a time and the happily ever after. Fantasy could still have magic, but it's also going to have things like castles and dragons. It might have mythical creatures in it. And an example that we have is one of my favorites, which is Harry Potter. Harry Potter, a boy who learns on his 11th birthday that he is the orphan son of two powerful wizards and possesses unique magical powers of his own. He is summoned from his life as an unwanted child to become a student at Hogwarts, an English boarding school for wizards. There, he meets several friends who become his closest allies and help him discover the truth about his parents' mysterious deaths. So we've got the magic, we've got the dragons, we've got the castles. So Harry Potter is a fantasy. Right now, please go fill in your fantasy notes. Our next genre is science fiction. Science fiction is a type of story that uses science and technology. It's usually going to be futuristic technology that we don't have yet in the real world. It's often set in the future. So remember, historical fiction takes place in the past. Science fiction often is going to be in the future. It sometimes includes things like time machines, robots, or aliens. Our example is Ready Player One. It takes place in 2045, so it's in the future. And the planet is on the brink of chaos and collapse. But people find salvation in the Oasis, an expansive virtual reality universe created by eccentric James Halliday. So we've got that futuristic technology. It takes place in the future, so it is science fiction. Right now, please go fill in your science fiction notes. Next, we have mystery. Mysteries are fictional stories, so again, they are made up, and they are usually focused on an unsolved crime. It's going to include detectives, lots of questions, secrets, and clues. Our example is very, very famous mystery, Sherlock Holmes. And it says, Sherlock Holmes is a private detective who has a keen power of observation. He lives at 221B Baker Street in London, and he notices things that others simply don't, and then he draws accurate conclusions about what he sees. He experiences strong mood swings, plays the violin, and is a master of deductive reasoning. So Sherlock Holmes, he's a detective, he solves mysteries. It fits into this genre. Right now, please go fill in your mystery notes on your note-taking sheet. Up next, we have fables. Fables are also fictional stories. They're usually passed down from generation to generation. There's normally some sort of lesson, so they try to teach you a moral or a lesson at the end, and they usually do that with talking animals. One really popular example of a fable is The Hare and the Tortoise. It's probably a story you've heard of before. In this story, we have a hare who ridicules a slow-moving tortoise, and tired of the hare's arrogance, the tortoise challenges him to a race. Now, if you've read the story, you know eventually that the tortoise does win, and it teaches us the lesson that hard work always pays off. Never underestimate your competition. So it does fit into the fable category. Right now, please go fill in your fable notes. Our next genre is myth. A myth is also a fictional story. It explains how things naturally occur, and it usually includes gods and goddesses. Percy Jackson is a really common, really popular example. On the first day of summer, just after his 6th grade year, Percy discovers that something is wrong with him, or rather that something is right with him. He learns that he is a half-blood, half-human, half-god. He's taken to Camp Half-Blood in New York, a camp for kids just like him that is safe from monsters that like to attack half-bloods. So we have the gods, the goddesses that makes the story fit into myth. Please go fill in your notes for myth right now. Next, we have informational text. Now we're starting to get into nonfiction, things that are real. Informational text provide facts or evidence to readers. They could be about science, animals, history, sports, lots of different things. Our example of an informational text is this textbook about biology. Textbooks are great examples of informational text because they are full of facts and they are nonfiction. Right now, please go fill in your informational text notes. Next, we have poetry. Poetry are verses written to create a response of thought and feelings from the reader, and they often use rhythm and rhyme. Now, all poetry doesn't have to rhyme, but sometimes it does. An example is The Crossover. Some of you may have read that. It's a book written completely in poetry. I've got a little excerpt from the book to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. It says, dribbling at the top of the key, I'm moving and grooving, popping and rocking. Why you bumping? Why you locking? I won't read the rest of it, but you guys get the idea. It kind of has some rhythm and flow, and it does have some rhyming as well. Right now, please go fill in your poetry notes. Our next genre is autobiography. An autobiography is when a person writes about his or her own life experiences. It would be like if I wrote a story about my life. An example is this book, My Life with Chimpanzees by Jane Goodall. You may have heard of her before. It says, My Life with Chimpanzees is a book for young adults that tells the story of Jane Goodall's rise to become the world's expert on chimpanzee behavior in the wild. This book is about Jane Goodall and is also by Jane Goodall. So she is the author. The book is about her. It makes this an autobiography. Please go fill in your notes now. All right, guys, we have made it to the end. Our last genre is biography. And biography is when a person writes about another person's life. So remember, autobiography is when you write about yourself. Biography is when someone else writes about a person. Our example here is, who is Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan did not write this book, but someone else wrote it about him, so that makes this a biography. Right now, please go fill in your biography notes. All right, guys and girls, that is going to do it for our notes today. Please make sure that you turn in your notes on Google Classroom so that your teacher has a record of your participation for today. And you may also want to keep these somewhere safe, maybe save them to your drive, because these notes could come in handy in the future. Thanks for watching.